There is a bird sitting somewhere near your yard right now that has memorized your face, your routine, and possibly the sound of your car turning onto your street. It watches you from the telephone wire when you take out the trash. It has cataloged which corner of the yard you never bother with. For months, maybe longer, it has been doing something that researchers spent years struggling to accept as scientifically real because the implications kept outrunning what anyone thought a bird could do. It has been building a mental file on you, one it will keep and consult for the rest of its life. The bird is the American crow. And what crow cognition research has uncovered in the last 2 decades does not fit the way most people think about the birds passing through their yards. If this is already making you look at the birds outside differently, hit the like button and subscribe. It really helps. And drop a comment telling me which birds visit your yard most often. I love knowing who I'm talking to. Crows belong to the family Corvidae, a group that includes blue jays, ravens, magpies, and Clark's nutcrackers. Corvids have been studied intensively since the 1990s, and the research has produced findings that forced scientists to revise what they believed about animal intelligence, repeatedly and sometimes with considerable reluctance. The American crow in particular has become one of the most thoroughly documented birds in North America, and the picture that documentation paints is nothing like the bird most people think they are dismissing when they wave one off the lawn. Before the science, the yard. Picture a Tuesday in late October. You have your coffee, you are standing at the back door looking out at the feeders, watching the usual crowd cycle through. Chickadees trading places on the branches, a house finch working through the sunflower feeder. And at the back of the yard, near the fence line, a crow. Large, black, quiet. It is not at the feeder. It is standing in the grass looking toward the house, looking, if you watch it for a moment, at you. Most people do what comes naturally. They assume it is waiting for scraps, or that it drifted into the yard by chance and will move along. It does not register as a feeder bird. It does not register really as a bird that has any particular opinion about your yard or the person standing in it. Crows feel like parking lot birds, industrial birds, birds that belong at the edge of things. The idea that one is making a careful, accumulated judgment about you as a specific individual is not a thought that tends to arrive with the morning coffee. That crow is not waiting for scraps. It is gathering data. The American crow has one of the highest brain-to-body mass ratios of any bird species. Its brain is structured differently from a mammalian brain. Instead of the layered neocortex that primates rely on, crows have a region called the Nidopallium caudolaterale, densely packed, richly connected, capable of the kind of flexible and forward-looking cognition most people associate with animals much larger and more socially complex than a bird. Crows use tools. They plan for future events. They recognize individual human faces and maintain those recognitions across years, not days. That last ability is the one that changes the way you have to think about every crow you have ever passed without acknowledging. John Marsluff and his colleagues at the University of Washington spent years documenting facial recognition in urban crows. Their method was precise. Researchers trapped crows while wearing specific rubber masks. After the birds were released, those same masks were worn through the same areas by different people entirely. The crows that had been trapped reacted to the mask, not the body beneath it. They scolded, they called out to other crows who had witnessed nothing and had never been trapped themselves. Years passed. The hostility toward that specific face persisted. The offspring of trapped crows also responded to those masks because the adults had passed the information along. A single negative experience with a human face had spread through a crow population and held across generations. The crow at your fence is not running a neutral scan. Over weeks and months of watching you move through your yard, it has assigned you a status. Whether that status is safe, uncertain, or worth avoiding is something that accumulated without your input, based entirely on what that bird observed and encoded every time you stepped outside. And according to everything the research shows, that status is not going to reset. Most people who consider themselves backyard birders think about building connections with the small, colorful birds. The cardinals, the chickadees, the bluebirds. Those relationships feel intuitive and warm. The crow standing at the back of the yard with that flat, deliberate look does not feel like relationship material. It feels incidental. That is the misreading. And it is almost universal. The crow at the edge of your yard is almost certainly not passing through. American crows maintain well-defined home ranges in residential areas and return to the same locations across multiple years. The crow watching you this October may have watched you last October. It may have watched you for 3 or 4 years running, assembling a picture of you that is more detailed than you would be comfortable with if you knew exactly what it contained. The small birds at your feeder see a human shape filling a feeder. The crow at your fence sees you. Those are not the same thing, and the difference between them is the entire point of what we are going to look at today. The science that explains what that crow is doing involves a concept called episodic-like memory. In humans, episodic memory is the ability to mentally travel back to a specific past event, to recall not just what happened, but where, and when, and in what context. For a long time, this was considered uniquely human. The argument was that true episodic memory required a sense of self, a theory of mind, a level of consciousness that non-human animals simply could not access. Corvid research dismantled that argument in stages. Nicola Clayton and her team at Cambridge showed that western scrub jays, close relatives of the blue jays in your yard, cached food in different locations and later retrieved specific items based on what they had stored, where, and how long ago. They could remember the content of a specific hiding event. They could plan for future needs. When other jays had been watching them cache food, they returned later and moved the stash, apparently understanding that a witness creates a theft risk. What this tells you about the crow watching you is not just that it has a good memory. It is that the crow is running a social model. It tracks what other individuals know. It adjusts its behavior based on who has seen what. The crow that watched you take the scraps to the bin 3 weeks ago and then watched you fill the feeder yesterday has filed both of those events, and it is using them together to form a picture of your patterns and your reliability. If you're finding this helpful, please subscribe and turn on notifications. I upload new videos every week, and I'd hate for you to miss one. Your support is what makes this channel possible, and it genuinely means the world to me. Now the behaviors. Because once you know what the crow is capable of, the things it does in your yard start reading completely differently. The first behavior most people notice is the watching. A crow sitting in the same location day after day, oriented toward the house, not at the feeder, not moving through the yard. People read this as territorial posturing or random perching. The crow is doing something far more deliberate. It is maintaining a fixed observation point for a location it has decided is worth monitoring. Your yard, with its feeders and its food scraps and its reliably appearing human, has passed a threshold of interest. The fixed perch is how it keeps its data current. The second behavior is the call that happens when you appear. Many people have a crow that calls out loudly the moment they walk through the back door, and they assume they have disturbed it or annoyed it somehow. In many cases, that call is not an alarm. Crows have distinct vocalizations for different situations, and a short 2 or 3 note call directed toward your appearance is frequently a contact call, the crow acknowledging your presence the way you might nod to someone you recognize. You are not frightening it, you are being checked in with. The third behavior causes more confusion than almost anything else crows do: leaving objects. Crows have been documented leaving small items, pebbles, pieces of foil, bottle caps, occasionally food, near locations associated with humans who have fed them or treated them well. Gabi Mann in Seattle famously collected dozens of objects left by crows over several years after a childhood of feeding them regularly. The behavior is not fully understood, but it appears to be connected to the crow's gift-giving social dynamics within its own family group, extended outward to humans who have earned a particular kind of status in the bird's model of its world. If you have ever found a small object placed deliberately near your feeder and wondered where it came from, check whether a crow has been watching you. The fourth behavior is the mob escort, and it is one of the most misread interactions in backyard birdwatching. When a crow spots a hawk or an owl in your yard and begins mobbing it, calling loudly, diving, pulling other birds into the confrontation, and then looks toward your house, or follows the predator to the edge of your line of sight before stopping, that crow is doing something specific. It is not performing for you randomly. Research on crow mobbing behavior shows that crows track human attention and presence during predator encounters, and in some cases appear to use humans as part of their threat landscape, calling toward familiar humans as part of a coordinated territorial response. Your presence, if you are a known quantity in that crow's territory, is factored into how it handles the hawk 2 trees over. The fifth behavior is the one that takes the longest to notice, and the one that means the most once you do. Over time, if a crow has categorized you as safe, the distance it maintains from you shrinks. Not quickly, not dramatically. Over weeks and months, it lands a little closer. It stays a little longer when you are outside rather than moving off. The approach it allows is 2 or 3 feet shorter than it allows a stranger walking through your yard. That is not a coincidence. That is the flight initiation distance, the distance a bird keeps before flushing, being calibrated specifically to you. The crow is deciding, incrementally and based on accumulated evidence, that you are someone it can afford to be near. The sixth behavior connects everything. A crow in your yard that has been observing you consistently will sometimes follow you to a new part of the yard you do not often use. You go to the far corner to clear leaves, and the crow relocates to a branch that keeps you in its line of sight. This is the crow updating its model. New location, new behavior, new data point. You have just told it something about your yard habits it did not previously have, and it is filing it. When you put all 6 of these behaviors together, the fixed watch point, the contact call, the object leaving, the mob positioning, the shrinking distance, the model updating follow, you are not looking at random bird behavior. You are looking at a relationship, one the crow has been building toward, on its terms, using standards that are entirely its own. Stand at your back door tomorrow morning and look for the crow, the one on the wire, the one at the fence. Give it a moment of real attention, the way it has been giving you. Something shifts when you do that, not immediately, but over time. Go back to that Tuesday morning in October. The coffee, the feeders, the crow at the fence. You are watching it now with different information than you had before, and that changes what the scene contains. The crow is not waiting for something to happen. It arrived at that fence because your yard is a known location in a mental map it maintains with the kind of precision that would embarrass most human navigators. It is there because you have appeared enough mornings in enough predictable patterns that it has moved you out of the unknown category and into something more specific. And it is looking at the house because you are the part of this location that requires the most continued monitoring. The file it has on you is not finished. It never is. Every time you step outside, you are adding to it. Most people who have watched a crow in their yard for years and felt something, some vague sense that the bird was paying attention, some instinct that the interaction was not random, talked themselves out of that feeling because it seemed too much to claim about a bird. Too human a quality to project onto an animal that most of the neighborhood treats as a nuisance. The research does not ask you to project anything. The research shows that the crow is doing this whether you notice it or not. The feeling was not wrong. The explanation was just missing. That is the shift, and it is a larger one than it might first appear, because once you see it with one bird, you cannot entirely unsee it with the others. The blue jay at your feeder is a corvid, same family as the crow, same basic neural architecture, same capacity for individual recognition and social modeling at a level that routinely surprises researchers who study it. The chickadee is not a corvid, but black-capped chickadees have been shown in multiple studies to remember the locations of thousands of individual cached food items for months at a time, using spatial memory that requires a hippocampus proportionally larger than most other birds. The bird you have been watching as background scenery has been running calculations you cannot see. What changes in your yard when you start responding to this is not dramatic. It is cumulative. Crows that associate a specific location with a safe and consistent human return to that location with greater frequency. They bring other crows. Crow family groups are tight, typically a breeding pair and 1 or 2 offspring from prior years, and when a location earns the trust of one bird in that group, the others inherit the assessment. A yard that one crow has classified as reliable eventually becomes a yard that a family of crows treats as a known resource on a known map. The feeders you fill and the water you keep fresh and the corner of the yard you leave a little wild are not just amenities. They are data points in a bird's model of what this place is worth. 5 years of that, and your yard is a different place than it was when you started. The birds that return each year are not returning by accident. They are returning because the location is encoded. Because the human there passed a test they were not aware of taking. Because the conditions that make a place worth knowing held year after year without collapsing. There is something worth sitting with in the long arc of that. You do not need expertise. You do not need equipment or technical knowledge or a birding background. What you need is consistency. Showing up, maintaining the water, filling the feeder, moving through your yard in a way that doesn't scatter everything every time. The bar the crow is actually measuring against is not high. It is just real. The research on long-term crow site fidelity shows that individual birds can maintain loyalty to a specific location for the entirety of their adult lives. American crows in stable residential areas have been documented returning to the same yards across 7 or 8 years. The crow that looked at you through the kitchen window this October may still be looking in your direction a decade from now, by which point it will know your routine better than most of your neighbors do. That is not a small thing to have built. Most people walk through their yards for years and never build it, not because they did anything wrong, but because no one explained what was actually being offered. The birds in your yard have always been doing this. The watching, the filing, the incremental calculation of whether you are someone worth being near. It was happening before you knew about the Nidopallium Caudolaterale, before you knew about John Marslough's masks, before any of this research existed, and before anyone thought to look. The crow on the wire this morning has been working from the same set of instincts for longer than the science has had words for them. What changes is not the bird. What changes is what you do with the information it has already been giving you. Go outside tomorrow morning. Move a little slower than you usually do. Don't walk toward the crow directly. Let it see you refill the water. Let it watch you move through the yard without startling anything. Do this enough mornings in a row, and something in the bird's assessment of you will shift in a direction you will eventually be able to measure in feet, the distance it keeps shrinking, a little at a time, as the evidence accumulates. The crow at your fence already has an opinion of you. This is your chance to weigh in on it. Thank you so much for being here until the very end. It means everything. If this video changed how you see the birds in your yard even a little, please share it with someone who loves nature. Check out the videos on your screen now. I think you'll love them. And subscribe if you haven't already. I'll see you in the next one.